One of the coolest things you can do is to use Wayback Machine and read articles from the past, especially when it comes to recent events. And you get to see how journalists, they now consider certain people far right, extremists, hateful, bigots. And then you go into the past and you read from the academic papers or you read from other journalists and you realize that you weren't being bigoted enough. That, being hateful is actually an art form that the journalists in the past, especially from Time Magazine, used to perfect. Here you have an interesting one, the Negro crime rate, a failure in integration. Now, I am a avid passionate of history, and failure of integration happens when you get a community, usually a minority. In Europe, it was usually based on religion, right? So like a Jewish community or a Protestant community or a puritanical community, right? And surrounded by a majority, and they decide to create this thing called a state within a state. And so what happens is like the community lives in an enclave, and they do not believe that the ways of the people that are in the majority are the correct ways. And so like they create this kinship where when you have, let's say, like criminal activity, they don't view it as a crime. Like they kind of view it as upsetting the majority, and upsetting the majority is actually a good thing because the majority is oppressing them anyway, right? Does that make sense? And so you end up with situations like this, where the Time Magazine wrote an article in 1958 saying who is they? They are afraid to say so in public, but many of the North's big city mayors groan in private that their biggest and most worrisome problem is the crime rate among Negroes. In 1,551 U.S. cities, according to the FBI tally, for 1956, black people make up 10% of the U.S. population, accounted for about 30% of all arrests, and 60% of the arrests for crimes involving violence or threat of bodily harm, murder, non-negligent manslaughter, rape, and other such crimes. Now, again, this was a far-right talking point, I've been told, but as you can see, this was written at the time in 1956 in Time Magazine. Far-right extremist rag, I assume. Black leaders sometimes argue passionately that arrests statistically wildly distort the comparative incidence of crime among black people and whites, because cops are more likely to arrest blacks for petty crimes on mere suspicion. But as you can see here, like the statistics aren't for petty crime, right? It's not for pickpocketing or for loitering. Violence or threat of bodily harm, murder, non-negligent manslaughter, rape. Now, here's the thing that I don't understand, right? Because recently there was this case in the United States, I'm pretty sure a lot of you are familiar, where a black person stabbed another kid in the heart. And people have opinions about that. But, like, my question is, why do you want such individuals in your society? Because, look, I've noticed on Twitter, there's a lot of white identitarians and other such individuals that are looking at what some of the black people on TikTok were saying, which is like, it doesn't matter if he is guilty or not. Like, we gotta stay together and we gotta, make sure that the jury does not convict him. And the white identitarian folks, the ones on Twitter that I showed a couple of posts on my live stream from, they look at that with jealousy, right? Like they want to covet that. Like they wish white people had that. And I'm thinking, why the fuck though, right? Like, I get the idea of solidarity, right? Because like that's what they think. It's like racial solidarity. Like you see another white person on the street and it's like, he's your daddy, you can ask him for money because it's part of the family, like whatever, like I get that. But what I don't understand is like, why do you want solidarity with murderers? Like, I don't fucking care if the person is the same gender, the same race, the same family, like my cousin, right? If he commits murder, I think that he should be separated from law-abiding citizen and be placed into prison. I don't want my kids to walk the streets where you have a murderer, right? So like, if anything, for violent crime, like, I would want the authorities to crack down on those people. Now, there are different types of crime, obviously, like ideological crime. Okay, fine, like, I don't agree with that. Like, this is where I want to be in an enclave. Like, the European Union is the majority. They're trying to push for ideological crimes. I disagree with it, and so I don't give a shit, right? If someone commits an ideological crime, I get, like, why I would want the jury to defend them. But when you're talking about rape, murder, bodily harm, manslaughter, like, here's the interesting thing, right? If this is happening in black communities, like, who do you think the victims of these crimes are? Like, if you're a black person, you would want those people to be removed from your community, right? Like, you have children running there. It's weird. Again, like, this is the mentality that I don't get. Now, I do try to empathize. I try to put myself into the shoes of a black person in the United States, and imagine that you grow up in a city where you don't see any white guys, right? Like, the only white people you see are on TV. And so, like, your entire family is black, your neighbors are black, like, everyone you talk to is black, okay? Like, I can get that. And so, like, you're being told by your community leaders, by your preacher, by the Democrats, you're being told that the white man is the devil and the reason you're poor is because he's keeping you down. Would I internalize that? The answer is probably yes, right? And so, whenever you hear about white people, like, it views as if they're malicious if you don't talk to them, if you don't know them. So, I kind of get that. And there was a journalist that actually talked about this as well, the exact same thing. Like, he grew up in a black neighborhood, he never met white people, and he was shocked when he actually did. But anyway, the editor at the time says that executive editor Charles Wortman of Detroit Michigan Chronicle, a black weekly, the number of blacks booked is at least partially indicative of subconscientious, if not conscientious, racial persecution on the part of police officers. Again, like, this was the same slogan, unconscientious prejudice, I guess, that they used in 2020. But this one was used in 1965, right? So it's literally the same ideology that came back. But inequality of treatment by the police may actually tend to shrink rather than inflate the statistic of black crime, says newsman Wortman in the next breath. When black people violate social morals, sex, drinking, gambling, white cops bypass this as typical black behavior. I mean, look, see, this is the interesting thing, like gambling and drinking. These are ideological moral crimes for my Eastern European take. I do think that America, especially in the past, exaggerated cracking down on them. So, like, okay, fine, there was a case to be had there. But when it comes to rape, murder, manslaughter, like, these are universal crimes, right? Like, any society, any culture throughout time, like, they consider this to be bad. Gambling, not so much. Prostitution, not so much. I mean, Aquinas, a very famous Catholic scholar, said that brothels are like the sewers of a palace. They're smelly, they're disgusting, but they keep the palace from flooding. Like, if you abolish brothels, you end up creating worse problems for society. Seriously, look it up. Aquinas is his name. So, like, my point is, when it comes to, like, sex crimes and prostitution, like, okay, fine, like, I can see why some people would disagree. Like, should it be legal for a person to sell their body to another, all right, without sending them to prison for 20 years? But when it comes to rape and murder, like, come on. Yeah, it's like, many black leaders protest that the police are far from diligent enough in dealing with crimes committing against black people, and black people are victims in the vast majority of black crimes of violence. So, what's interesting here is that back in the day, the black leaders were complaining not because you didn't abolish the cops, but it's because the cops weren't hard enough in order to crack down more, right? So, like, the unconscientious bias that they were talking about was the fact that police officers are looking at black people and they're saying, well, it's what they do, right? And the community leaders are like, no, arrest them. Like, arrest them, take them off our street. So, like, literally, they were saying what I've been saying. Since black people, even when they are victims or innocent bystanders, are often wary of calling the cops, many offenses or disorders and assault go unreported when committed by black people. Whether the statistics of black crime overstate or understate the reality, they are shrouded from public attention by what Chicago judge calls conspiracy of concealment. In many cities, black people and leaders, as well as organizations as the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, put pressure on politicians, city officials, and newspapers to play down the subject. Fearing the loss of black people votes, few elected officials dare to resist the pressure. I was told that democracy doesn't work and voting doesn't matter, yet here apparently it does, right? Abetting the concealment campaign is the feeling shared by many whites that it is unfair, inflammatory, and even un-American to talk about black crime. This feeling is reflected in the widespread newspaper practice of not mentioning a criminal's race unless he is at large and the fact would help identifying him. Again, this is from 1965, Time magazine. Most often, black leaders point to poverty as the number one factor in crime. See, I actually went to law school, and it's true, like, poverty can explain for some crime, but, like, rape? No. No. No, because no. No. Number one factor in black crime. As editor sees it, the main cause is poor and crowded housing. Okay, but, like, why is it the rural area having less crime than the cities then? Like, people in the rural area are oftentimes far more poorer than people that live in the cities. But the moderate crime rates among European immigrants, there we go, subject to similar stress or poverty and bad housing. I can actually explain why immigrant Europeans have low crime rates. It's also about the gangs, right? Like if you get born in a neighborhood that has gang activity, and let's say there actually aren't businesses there because of the gang activity, usually the person is much more likely to join a gang. Right? And gangs have like this thing with blood in, blood out. So like once you join at the age of 10, it's very difficult to get out. Meanwhile, an immigrant that goes somewhere is less likely to have the opportunity to join gangs. And so that can also be explained. And also like gangs, as I mentioned, they drive out businesses, right? And so it's a self-fulfilling cycle. Providing better housing for impoverished black people is a necessity, but it would not solve the problem of crime. Crime runs high in the black slums of Harlem and Southside Chicago, but they also run high in black districts of LA and San Francisco, where houses are comparatively decent. As many a public housing official has learned to his dismay, better housing does not automatically bring about the improvement in character and conduct that do-gooders used to predict. What's also interesting about crime, right? Black immigrants coming from Africa commit less crime than the black people that already live in the United States. And I think the reason for it is because black people that come from Africa, they want to integrate. Like they chose America, right? Like if you're in Africa and you want to leave Africa, you can choose Europe. You can choose the United Kingdom, you can choose Australia, you can choose America. So like they chose America because they want to integrate. The people that commit crimes is what the article basically suggests. A failure in integration, right? And so if you're actually looking at where the money is being pumped right now, like who's paying for what? The Democrats are paying specifically for the academia to promote the idea that, you know, like slavery still exists today, or like the ramifications of slavery still exist today, that, you know, you need to spell black with capital B, like all of the ideas that try to promote less patriotism for black people so that they don't identify with the United States, right? Meanwhile, how much money is actually spent for integration? Who is spending it, right? Like, is there a rich person, a billionaire, an NGO that's actually trying to spend money in black community to try and promote integration? And if the answer is no, then why are people surprised that there is a failure in integration when the money flows one way? Let me know what you guys think, though. And as usual, we'll see you in the comment section. Take care.